Hi, okay, so my name's Edward Povey, and this is a video lesson. It's a listening lesson following the PDP framework. And so this is just a sample lesson following the framework for listening and reading lessons. This specific lesson is for listening. The age group is about university students to adults, and the level is perhaps intermediate to advanced. And the material used for this lesson is a short clip of an interview with Emma Watson. Okay, so we're going to do the lesson and I'm going to discuss a little bit on each slide about the order of the activities and some of the reasons for each activity. Okay, so let's get started. So here's the warm-up, and you can see it's a very nice, simple, easy warm-up. It has a picture to help the students. And on the first slide, I ask them to discuss these questions. So the first question, what are typical things Koreans do on a first or second date? Number two, how do Koreans usually meet before they start dating? And number three, do you know about how dating culture in other countries is different? Okay, so these you can see that these are very simple, easy questions. Most students should be able to answer some of these questions with some interesting information. So I would give students maybe about 5 minutes, discuss in pairs, and then ask to report the information that they were discussing. Okay, so that's the warm-up. Okay, next slide. This is the lead-in activity. This is beginning to lead into the listening material. So we've got a categorization task. There are two sections. There's USA and UK. And the students have to put these things in the right section. So we've got, if you look at the list at the bottom in purple, we've got baseball, Thanksgiving, sarcastic humor, tipping, free healthcare, bonfire night, Yale, Indian food, positive attitude, Oxford, and Mexican food. So students, I'll give them a few minutes working in pairs to try to put those things into the right sections. Okay, and this slide is just to check the answers. So I can elicit from the students the answers and we can start seeing which ones fit into each. So these things fit into USA, and of course Mexican food, very popular. And for the UK, those things fit on the side of the UK. Okay, so I would collect those answers from the students before showing the answers. And there's one more step on this. It's nice always to give a little bit extra step in the same activity if you can. So what are the differences? Do you know? Add one more to each side and then let's discuss. So I'm sure students know a few more differences, maybe spelling of words or some other differences between the two places. So I would ask students to extend the list a little bit. Okay, so now this is a lead-in discussion. Okay, we've done a couple of we've done a warm-up, we've done a lead-in activity. Now we've got a lead-in discussion. So we're going to watch a clip from an interview with Emma Watson. And first question: what do you know about her? And the second question: she talks about the differences of dating Americans and Britons. What do you think are the differences? Okay, so the second question is predicting. Students are going to try to guess anything that's discussed in the video clip. So also on this slide, I've put a picture of Emma Watson there, just to help visually. And at the bottom, I've put a group of kind of famous Americans and British people that maybe could help students to think of any differences of the culture of these two countries. So I would give students a few minutes to discuss this and then collect their answers. And then on the next slide, we're going to watch the video to check your predictions for question 2. Okay, so here is listening 1. So now we're in the during stage. And so this is the first time we're going to listen and watch the clip, and the task related to this first listening is to find out who got the closest guess. So whose guess was the closest, and did anybody get more than one guess correct? Okay, so this first listening is actually to check the prediction. Okay, now often first listening could be to check prediction, it could be some kind of simple, easy warm-up kind of listening activity like checking the context, or some simple kind of pictures or titles or something like that. Okay, so let's watch the video for the first time and see if any of your predictions were correct.
So you're dating, I assume you're dating. I don't know if you're in a relationship, but there's got to be a difference between English guys and American guys, right?
Yeah, there's definitely one or two differences that I've noticed. English guys are like very well put together, and they dress really well, and they're like very well mannered. But but they're also very restrained. Like usually, you know, in the whole courting situation, I'm used to being like, first of all, ignored for like the first 2 months of the ritual, and then maybe they'll acknowledge my presence, and then they'll probably be a little mean to me, and then maybe whatever. And then I arrive in America, and I remember like few nights into Brown, this guy just being like, I like you, you're great, let's go out on a date, let's do it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what just happened?
Yeah.
This is like, a huge culture shock for me, is that, they're very like open and very straightforward, but they wear flip-flops, so I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, it's about, you gotta figure it out. All right, well.
Okay, so it's a very short clip, this one. I'm just using this clip as an example. So the clip's finished, and now I would check and we'd find out who got the closest guesses, or anybody had any kind of similar predictions from the first listening. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so before we get ready for the second time we're going to listen, I just want to introduce this little extra concept for the students. So have a look at these pictures, and can you guess what these pictures are trying to represent? What is the word that I'm trying to get from the students? So here's a question to give a hint. What is the name of the behavior or period of time during which a couple develop a romantic relationship? Okay, so what is the name of the behavior between a couple, or the period of time between a couple? Okay, so I'd give students a little bit of time to think about it. Maybe we would get a few guesses, and the answer is courtship. Okay, so the second listening, we're going to think about courtship. Okay, so this is listening 2. So we're going to watch the video again, and Emma Watson talks about the different courting sequences of the British courting style and the American courting style. So can you put or write the numbers for the correct numbers in the sequence? Okay, so have a look at the bottom there. We've got British courting style, and there are 3 options at the bottom. Number 1, I've given the first example for you. Number 1 is be ignored. And then to the side, we've got the American courting style, and we've got 3 expressions that Americans might use in their courting style. Okay, so we're going to watch the video again, and please try to put the numbers in the right boxes for British courting style and American courting style. Okay.
So you're dating, I assume you're dating. I don't know if you're in a relationship, but there's got to be a difference between English guys and American guys, right?
Yeah, there's definitely one or two differences that I've noticed. English guys are like very well put together, and they dress really well, and they're like very well mannered. But but they're also very restrained. Like usually, in the whole courting situation, I'm used to being like, first of all, ignored for like the first 2 months of the ritual, and then maybe they'll acknowledge my presence, and then they'll probably be a little mean to me, and then maybe whatever. And then I arrive in America, and I remember like a few nights into Brown, this guy just being like, I like you, you're great, let's go out on a date, let's do it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what just happened?
Yeah.
This is like, a huge culture shock for me, is that, they're very like open and very straightforward, but they wear flip-flops, so I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, you gotta figure it out. All right, well.
Okay, so I hope that you were listening carefully and you found out the numbers. So let's check the answers together. So the first thing in the British courting style, according to Emma Watson, is to be ignored. And the second, can you remember what is the second? The second is acknowledge presence. So the third one is be a bit mean, and then maybe something will happen later on. Okay, so for the American courting style, can you remember what was the first expression that might be used? Okay, the answer is I like you is the first one. And the second expression, you're great. And so the third expression is let's go out on a date. Okay, so now notice the second listening is a little bit more detailed. It's not general. And now we're going into more specific parts of the conversation to get more specific details. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so Emma Watson also talks about characteristics, and she gives a big list of characteristics for American guys and British guys. So can you put these characteristics in the correct sections? So I've given you a word box. The characteristics are in purple, and you can see dress well, straightforward, well put together, open, wear flip-flops, direct, and restrained. Okay, so let's listen one more time, and can you put the characteristics in the correct sections? Okay, so it's kind of a graphic organizer task. Okay, are you ready?
So you're dating. I assume you're dating. I don't know if you're in a relationship, but there's got to be a difference between English guys and American guys, right?
Yeah, there's definitely one or two differences that I've noticed. English guys are like very well put together, and they dress really well, and they're like very well mannered. But they're also very restrained. Like usually, in the whole courting situation, I'm used to being like, first of all, ignored for like the first 2 months of the ritual, and then maybe they'll acknowledge my presence, and then they'll probably be a little mean to me, and then maybe whatever. And then I arrive in America, and I remember like few nights into Brown, this guy just being like, I like you, you're great, let's go out on a date, let's do it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what just happened?
Yeah.
This is like, a huge culture shock for me, is that, they're very like open and very straightforward, but they wear flip-flops, so I don't know if I like that.
You gotta figure it out. All right, well.
Okay, so that was the third listening, and so that time the focus was on another aspect of the listening. Okay, so, and again, this stage has one little extra step just to give students a little bit more practice. So I've given a couple more examples and asked students to add those in to the table. Okay, so now let's check the answers. So according to Emma Watson, who is direct? Was it Americans or British? Okay, the answer is Americans. So according to Emma Watson, who is well put together? Is it Americans or British? Okay, the answer is British. Okay. According to Emma Watson, who is restrained? Okay, the answer is British. And according to Emma Watson, who wears flip-flops? Okay, and of course the answer is not British, it's Americans. Okay. Okay, so we've checked the answers. That was the third listening, and now because this is just a short example lesson, I'm going to move on to the post stage. Now, I was just using a 1-minute video clip, so there wasn't that much information in there. A longer lesson would have a longer clip and would include more activities in the during stage. But let's have a look at this post stage activity. So I had this idea that the video clip is talking about Americans and British. And of course in Korea, Koreans are going to know more about Koreans and possibly a country near to Korea such as Japan, because a lot of the culture is shared and more similar than Korea and Britain, for example. So in this post-stage discussion, I've put some pictures of Korean celebrities and Japanese celebrities, and here is the task. So we have learned a little bit about some differences of the American and British culture and dating style. Do you know any differences between Korea and Japan related to dating culture, style and fashion, or stereotypes? Okay, so this is a discussion. I'm going to ask students to discuss in groups and discuss any differences of these three aspects: dating culture, style and fashion, and stereotypes of these two countries. Okay, so I would put students into groups. Hopefully they would have some ideas, some things to talk about, and they can discuss these things. So this is a post-stage discussion. It's kind of a similar topic, but changing the content a little bit. And then finally, we have this Venn diagram, and I would give this on a worksheet and ask students to put some keywords and buzzwords into the Venn diagram about the differences. Okay, so this has been an example lesson following the PDP framework, and I hope that it's given you a little bit of an idea about how to organize some different types of activities you can do when you're including listening and video clips in your lesson.